Hi, you guys. I talk about our core a lot, which is reading, math, and French. And I often skip over some of the other things that I call secondary, but it doesn't mean they're any less important. It simply means that our core drives all of the secondary things. The secondary stuff comes along for the ride and is at level or just close to it. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time today talking about the other part of ELA. The stuff I actually enjoy talking about less, except for the creative writing part. But reading is huge for us, and it drives every single other thing. So within reading, we're talking about, I have Morgan write, and we discuss vocabulary and spelling. And because we're doing narration and talking about the book, there's comprehension. And because Morgan's writing and I'm correcting her work and we're walking through that, she has grammar. And so that's about as far as grammar as we have gotten this year, because we've done so much last year. So I think for this video, I'll do a little bit of history of where we've come from and where we are, and then where we're headed. I will say though that having some kind of pinpoint on the map, kind of what anchors us, is Morgan's green book. So you've seen this a whole bunch of times, and I've written the green book drives the spelling book, but it drives every single thing. So this is her journal. She writes in it every single day, Monday through Friday. She doesn't have to write in it on the weekends, but this is her journal. This is what I give her prompts. She writes things. She practices writing. She does poetry in here. All of her writing, all of her practice goes in here, because we don't, if you've seen any of my videos, you'll kind of know that we don't have a lot of workbooks. There's not a lot for her to open and then just start filling in, which can be handy at times, but it doesn't quite work for, thankfully, Morgan, because it would really be not enjoyable for me at all if we did too many workbooks. I think I got over workbooked in certain grade levels, and I know that if I see, for instance, a crossword puzzle or a word search, I just get mad just looking at them. I just don't want to have anything to do with them, and Morgan doesn't like them either. So more and more, the things that Morgan does is original. It's from her. She writes it, she does it, she creates it. But let's start on this side, and we'll cover grammar. So I have not talked about grammar at all. I think in the beginning I showed you, I think it was Michael Clay Thompson versus Fix It Grammar at the beginning of the year. So we liked Fix It Grammar. Morgan really enjoyed it, and I don't have level 1 because she finished level 1 and I tore it apart and I put it in her portfolio for the state. But this is an example. We did buy level 2. So level 2 is Town Mouse and Country Mouse. We just really haven't started it. I think Morgan picked it up a couple weeks ago and did a few pages of it. But we did so much grammar last year. So we did this whole book last year, and we also did, and this one is really great, we did First Language Lessons for the Well-Trained Mind level 4. Let's see, and this was her workbook. And then this was her workbook. We did everything but the last, I think, couple of chapters in this. So we did quite a lot of grammar last year, and we liked both. So I purchased the next one. So this was First Language Lessons for the Well-Trained Mind level 4. And then after that, it goes into a colored series. And so you can buy any of the color series at all. There's green, red, yellow, and blue, I think. And Morgan or purple. Yeah, so Morgan chose purple. This one is the key. I think I have hers in digital format. I regret getting the digital format because I really would prefer just to grab a book. And so I think when we start this, I will purchase the hard copy of this from Morgan. And with this, you need also years 1 through 4 core instructor key. You only have to buy this once. It's for all 4 of the books. The purple one, I want to say it's blue and yellow and red. The green, I get confused because the green one is the like 4-year key. But because we did so much grammar last year and Morgan had a pretty good handle on it, it kind of got kicked to the side this year because grammar is not currently a problem. And I kind of feel like what we are doing with her writing in her book is really, really good. So she reads it to me, Morgan writes, and then she reads it aloud, and I stand over her shoulder and see what it is that she has written, how she's written it, her grammar, her punctuation, and her spelling. And then we talk about it. So that's why I have as a sticky note, the green book drives the spelling book, because the mistakes that she makes in here, in particular with spelling, there are very few grammatical errors in here. If there are, it's more of a punctuation issue and not actual, the structure of the sentence is fine. So what happens is when Morgan has spelling mistakes in here, I double check, because if she's got a spelling mistake, because if she's writing quickly, we all do that. I misspell things constantly and then just don't go back to fix them because I'm writing them very quickly. That's sort of like a junk book or a practice book. So I double check that she knows how to spell the word. I'll ask her to close her eyes or write it down or close her eyes and spell it aloud. And if she has it, or she says, I know that one, I just glossed over it because I was busy writing, then it doesn't go into her spelling book. And this is her spelling book. So she generates her spelling. The things that she uses are the things, in my opinion, she's going to want to need to know how to spell. And that's strange too, because I think there are some more simpler words that she has trouble with because she doesn't necessarily use them. And then other very complicated words. For instance, she needed to know the word, she wanted to use the word diaphanous. And so that's one of the words that she can spell now. But she also has trouble with the word again. And that's also there in her spelling book. This is not a linear thing. This isn't a, well, let's discuss AI, let's discuss AE, let's discuss ER or RE. It doesn't work that way in Morgan's mind, and I don't force that. If Morgan wants to know a word, she puts it to memory really quickly. If I give her a list of words to memorize, she will memorize them. But then if I quiz her 3 weeks later and we haven't used the words, she doesn't know them at all. So all of the work in memorization is really a waste of time. Every kid's different. This one's just mine. But what I wanted to do is show you the alternative ways that I've come up with because they work for my kid. And I tell you, the videos from moms who did similar things like this a couple of years ago when I was looking into homeschooling, it was really helpful. And so that's also another kind of reason why I'm on YouTube, is to give back what I had gotten from many of the homeschool moms. I would not have known what to do or where to go. And it was really helpful. And also the ones who say, do it your way because it's your kid and your kid's different. And so if this doesn't work for you, that's great. But some of these ideas might work in some other topic. It doesn't necessarily have to be ELA. But for us, what I have found is this book this is power. This is total power. This is working really, really well. And the thing about this, though, for a portfolio state is that I'm not taking this apart. So if the state wants to see this, or if I need to hand this in, I will either lend it to them or make copies and show them the grammar and show them the spelling and show them the punctuation, because I don't have a workbook of proof that I have done that, but I do have a journal packed full of it. And it doesn't have to be a certain layout. It just has to show. And I need to see it too. I need to see the improvement. I need to see that what we are doing for Morgan is working for her, and it is the best thing for her. And that's what it is for us. So these two things, these are mint. And I haven't really brought the spelling book up that much either. Also, Buddy is sick, and so he's with me snoring. I usually kick him out of the room lately, but he's a little ill. So if you hear snoring, I apologize. Now, so from there, we have the grammar. We really have as much grammar as we're going to need for a while, because we can always revisit. I would say that if you did level 4 as an adult, you would learn a lot. And so level 4 is really fantastic. And you could keep this if you don't know where to start and you've got a middle schooler or even a high schooler. It's not a bad thing to start with level 4, because this one has a steep ramp. It assumes that you have everything down here. And then after about, a quarter in, it builds quickly, and it's really in depth with diagramming sentences. And if you're not interested in that, you don't need to. Nobody's going to die if they haven't diagrammed a sentence in their entire life, except I think Susan Weiss-Bauer might have something to say about that. But this is just a nice to have 3/4 or a quarter of the way in, as it starts to build in diagramming. This is nice for us and we like it. So along with that, I have a diagramming cheat sheet with a dictionary here. So how to diagram any sentence and a diagramming dictionary. I bought these for myself and these are pretty helpful as well. But if you're teaching a kid, you get the key and you get their workbook, and then this is the core instructor text for the entire 4 years. And then I think there's one gripe that I had with Fix-It Grammar. The vocabulary isn't really vocabulary, I don't think. At the level of the grammar that they're doing, I think the vocabulary is pretty simple. So I wouldn't actually call it vocabulary. But spelling, okay, maybe for spelling. One thing I'm not real thrilled with, and I think another mom a few years ago had said it didn't used to be like this. They have a market list, so the student sees what it is in the sentence that they need to find and correct. And I wish that they would just say, find article, nouns, pronouns, adjective, or just mark the sentence rather than that cheat sheet so that they know, oh, well, there's 4 nouns. I need to keep looking until I find the 4th one. And this is where I had decided to buy Michael Clay Thompson's Grammar Town, and we haven't started it yet. We just haven't. I'd really like to. I just don't see it happening this year. I think having a year off of formal grammar is okay because of the way I'm doing it with Morgan. I will say, however, and I want to really caveat this, I'm really comfortable teaching language. And if you're not, then get a program. Because when I say I do it on the fly with Morgan, maybe it appears like that, but I really am planning and prepping and thinking about what she needs that day or what I need to correct, or I'm tracking her pretty tightly because I'm just homeschooling the one kid. So if you have multiples, it may be just a better thing to have a more formal program. And I really am looking forward to this. I showed this to you guys, and this is one of very few curriculas that I've purchased and haven't bought or haven't used. Now let's move on to something that I think for vocab and spelling. Our reading really drives the vocab, and I have Morgan read at or just above her grade level. And then we kind of work on she just finished a really massive book, and so I'm going to have her do some thinner books just to kind of crank a few out so she's not so exhausted, because even though it's the same, you're reading a few pages a day and it's the same number of pages, or maybe it's the same amount of time that you're reading each day, there's just something emotional about having read, when you finish a book like Dune, you sort of want to take a break before you jump into the next one. So I'm doing that with her now, but the books that I read to her or that we listen to as read-alouds together are well above her grade level. And I am finding, and because we talk and I like to use words with her and we like to play with words and move them around and kind of change them for fun. My mother was like that with us, and now I think I'm like that with Morgan. Because of that, her vocabulary is much higher. So she's using words that she can't spell. And I think that's just okay. Honestly, it matters that she knows how to find out how to spell the word. It matters that she corrects her work before she submits something formally. It matters that she cares about using the words well in a sentence that is her sentence. And that's what I care about. And so that's sort of the mindset that I'm going here with. Because of that, these are the books I'd also shown you: the highly selective dictionary for the extraordinarily literate. This is really hard for me to say. I've stammered over this a couple of times and I'm tired of editing it. And then the same with the thesaurus and the golden adjectives. We, in conjunction with, for next year, in conjunction with a couple of things, and I'll kind of pre-show you some of the curriculum that I've already purchased for next year, but she had already had this vocabulary cartoon of the day. We use this, it's fun. And what I do is I flip like this, she closes her eyes and she puts her finger on a page, and wherever it lands, that's the word we're gonna look at that day and spell and talk about. And then I do it. And so she has one word and I have another word from this book. And the object is to use it 3 times in a sentence appropriately over a period of time, not just 3 sentences, one right after the other, but she has to use that vocab word in a sentence 3 times throughout the week, just to see if I can do it and just to see if she can do it. And that kind of really friendly, scholastic competition, Morgan thrives on that. It's just really fun. Also, for my own use, grades 6 through 8, McGraw-Hill vocabulary, I don't know how much Morgan will see this, but I use this to drive my own vocabulary with her. If there's a word that I haven't used in a while that I want to use with her, because when I do, she usually picks up on it and says, "What's that?" And I'll ask her, "What do you think it is?" What do you think in context? What do you think that means? And so then we have a conversation that way. Does she use that word? Sometimes. Maybe she will bring it into her repertoire, into her vocabulary list, and maybe she won't. But she is bombarded with vocabulary in this house, and I think that that is a good thing for her. And then we have word ladders, which can be kind of frustrating. It's like super annoying if I can't come up with the answer. And so, but we like to do stuff like that, especially on a Friday, to just make learning of the whole of ELA, of pretty much everything, fun. So let's move on, because there's something that I wanted to show you that we have let go. And it's kind of sad. We're both pretty sad about it. So if you have been watching our videos, you know that we had been doing, Morgan had a little 1 sentence a day and I had 1 sentence a day, and it's a 5-year book. And I regret getting a 5-year book, because we filled out the whole year and then we went further into this year. But we found that we were missing so many days. And I started thinking, this is becoming kind of a chore. Why is it a chore? Why was it fun last year? And why are we forgetting to do it now? Well, after I took a break and quit feeling guilty about it, I realized that something else way more important took precedence, and that's Morgan's journal. It's just moved. It's moved from one thing to the other. But what Morgan has asked is that we please keep these and not let them go, because there are some really important little sentences in here. I just wish that so much of it is not filled out. And if you're going to do something like this, then maybe you want just a year journal instead of a 5-year journal, and then you just buy a new one each year. So that's just something to think about. Now with creative writing, you've seen these before, and I'll just flip through them really quickly for you or show them here. The creative writer, we'll have these for a long time. Throughout the whole of middle school, we will have these. And I think I'd accidentally shown you Save the Cat, the last book on screenwriting that you'll ever need, but I have the novel version. Save the Cat Writes a Novel. It's really good. You should listen to it when you're in the car, or you can buy it and read it, but it's really, really fun. And I use these to drive how I teach Morgan. So she hasn't read this book. I have read this book. I've read this book. I've read this book. I've read them all. And I think that's why Waldorf is so enticing for me, because Waldorf makes the teacher take in all of the information and then teach the material. You're not giving them something to read. You're teaching them from yourself, from your voice, and then they're creating their own work alongside of you. And I think that that's what I have been doing, and that's why Waldorf education has been working kind of really fit naturally into what Morgan and I are doing now. But I do have these 2 workbooks, and because we had been using How to Write a Novel Before You Turn 13, we haven't used these yet, and we likely won't for a while, but they're not something that I regret buying. They're something that I want to keep. And one thing that I'm realizing is some of this that I have purchased is really going to be good for us for years, either consecutively. For a long, long time, we can use something. I can certainly use these books as reference, or we will use them in years. So we'll either use these books for years, or we'll use these books in years from now. And I would envision using something like this in a creative writing course alongside Morgan in high school. I think this would be really, really fun to do if she'd like to do that with me. There is a set of 3 books that I found, and I'm reading them myself, and I may use them with Morgan. And I have listed here, I like them because there's no childish cartoons. It's written in plain English. It talks to you like a person who wants to learn, not a person who needs to learn. And that is Spelling Strategies and Secrets, the Essential How to Spell Guide. Yeah, second. These are all from the same author. It's both British and American English, which is really helpful for me. So I kind of like that this is for British and American English. And I do teach Morgan both ways because I think it's important to know that when you get an email from someone overseas, sometimes it isn't misspelled, it's just their spelling. And then I have Spelling Rules Workbook, a step-by-step guide to the rules of English, and a punctuation guide. These are helpful for me because they're written to an adult, not an ESL adult, but an adult who needs to pay attention to their spelling or their grammar and kind of up their game a little bit. And that's where I am when I need to teach Morgan more complicated grammar, for instance. I need to know what it is that I'm doing so that I don't inform her in the wrong way. But when I was flipping through this, I realized this is actually a really nice workbook that I think she would like to use. So I will give her, I'll show it to her and I'll give her the option. And then if she wants to do it, I don't know if she can do it at any time. I mean, it's for adults, but it's something that I will keep on hand. A lot of this stuff is my reference so that I can teach Morgan, but I will keep this on hand and I won't fill it out. If she wants it, she can have it. I suspect she might want it. Then the last few things I have are, I printed this out, let's see, Fave Flash Fiction. So these are flash fiction prompts, short stories. And I mean, there's really nothing to see here. It's just a list of prompts that you can find anywhere. If you just Google it, flash prompts for short stories, you can find a free printout. And I think there's 4 pages here because sometimes when Morgan is writing in her journal, she needs a new idea or she wants to write a short fiction story and I need to produce a good prompt for her. So before she gets up in the morning and I'm prepping real fast for our day, I will look at a couple of prompts here and just put them in my mind of ideas that I can give her if she's asking for prompts. And there's some really interesting things. You give her the first sentence, or I give her the first sentence, and I can tell that that's stuck. Like, that's an interesting sentence I like, where I might be able to take that, and she chooses that one, or she looks at me kind of like, oh, I don't really feel like that one. I'll give her another couple because I don't care what she writes about. I just care that she writes well. I want her to pick a sentence or a writing prompt that she likes. And it's usually the first or second one that I've picked for her, and she rolls with it and writes a short story in here real quick for me. Well, for her, actually. She's written some cute stories in here. And then the writing teacher's activity a day. I got this for myself. I'll probably do some flip throughs here after, I don't know, just ask me for them and I'll do them. Whatever you want, just ask. Write me a list of the things you want me to flip through and I'll do it next week. How about that? But I like the way this is laid out because each page is something completely different. It's a new idea. It's something that I can go day by day and talk to Morgan about just for 5 minutes and move on. Or what I might do is in our Waldorf for our 4th year, Morgan's in 5th grade. We're in 4th year for Waldorf. And if you're Waldorfy, you kind of know that, for instance, next year we're doing ancient India and ancient Persia. We could have just as easily done it this year. We could easily do it in the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So you teach at the level that your kid is at. It doesn't really matter. And I wanted to start with 4th year because of the topics in it. And we can just roll. It goes up to 8th year. So it doesn't matter if she does 8th year in the 9th grade. But in here, it talks about grammar and teaching grammar. So with Waldorf, and you don't have to do live education. We just chose it that way. But there's a few Waldorf programs out there. But they remind you what you want to think about in this 4th year in the age of 9 to 11. And that sort of drives what we do. And there's a week in here, or a couple of weeks, I think, in the program that's allotted for main lessons for paying attention to grammar. So we might do that. We might do a week or 2 of just grammar in the mornings and do a nice freshen up of a reminder. I think 2 weeks of a couple hours a day of grammar and discussing sentence structure and punctuation could really help anybody. And then by the time, just before we're burnt out on it, we'll stop and move on. And I think that would be a really good refresher for us. Maybe I'll do that. You know, I might do that. We test in May. So the very last week of our school is just going to be testing. And so what I might do then is, leading up to that, do a week or two of main lesson for grammar just to freshen up before the exams. That might be a nice timing for it. And finally, there's two other locations that Morgan does her writing, and one is her poetry books. So when we read poetry, and I don't always talk about that, but we read poetry. And I've shown a lot of poetry books that I had purchased in the last year's curriculum picks. And so you'll see that. We do read poetry and we enjoy it. If Morgan particularly likes a poem, she'll keep it in this book. And she also writes her own poetry in it as well. And finally, our main lesson book. So in here is her final write-ups, and then the verbal narrations that she gives me, I type them up as she's speaking, and then we put them in here. So there's spelling and vocab and grammar and writing, and the comprehension is everywhere. It's all over. It's like fairy dust, essentially. All of the comprehension is, I think, what you see. Instead of me giving her work pages of reading a couple of paragraphs and then answering some questions or filling in the blanks, because we don't do it that way, I think that anyone who reads the poetry that she's writing, anyone who reads her journal, and anyone who looks at her main lesson books, which there isn't a ton in here in comparison to what we do, but there certainly is here, then this gives not just the state, but this isn't just for the state. It's for me and Morgan. This shows me if we're in the right direction, if we're going in the right direction, if I need to pivot, if I need to slow down, if we need to speed up in any way or location. So if Morgan's spelling is lagging behind, that doesn't mean I slow down in the books that I give her, or we don't slow down with comprehension, or we don't slow down with vocab. So everything, the nice thing about ELA is everything can kind of work at different speeds and paces. And that's important to me. It's really important to me because it was not that way when I was growing up. And I remember those stupid colored books, the color-coded books, gold book and the blue books and the red books and the orange books and the black books. And I think there were other colors too, the green books. And if you know what I'm talking about, there were little dots on the outside of books, and that was your level. And I was always at the lowest level of reading, and everybody else was way over here. But the thing is, my vocab was really good. So I had trouble with reading, probably because I was a little antsy. I didn't want to sit and read. I think if we'd had Audible books back then, I would have really thrived, and I would have enjoyed the idea of beginning to read if I'd had those things to enjoy. So I want to make sure that Morgan is not held back in her strong suits of ELA because she has weaknesses in other areas. That would be really a disaster here for her. And by allowing all of these things, all of this stuff to work at whatever speed and intensity and depth or shallowness, whatever we're doing at any given time or day, is moving in a positive forward direction for her. And so honestly, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and it's working that way for us. So I wanted to show you the whole kind of gamut of ELA because I don't talk about ELA, I talk about reading, because reading for us drives the entire train. And it isn't that way for everybody, maybe. It just, I find that it works that way for us. So there you have it. We do spelling after all. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Oh, and if you want any flip throughs, do let me know and I'll do that for the next video. See ya.